People who aren't afraid of dying, what makes you unafraid? And are you afraid? Write in the comments what you think about it. Enjoy the show. Story 1. I find that death is a motivating factor for me to persist in the activities and goals I have set out for myself. Life would not be as beautiful and precious if it were eternal, in my opinion. Death teaches me to cherish the present moment, to love the people around me a little more every day, and to take measured risks. For example, speak up for causes I believe in, advocate for those who cannot do so, take a chance on myself. I live each day as if it were my last, not with reckless abandon, but by being happy with what I did that day, even if it is mundane. I inhale my morning coffee a bit deeper. I smile at strangers at the grocery store, and hug my loved ones a bit tighter. Death can be really scary if you are trying to control things that are impossible to control. If you are afraid of losing beautiful things and beautiful people through death, cherish them more today. Nothing is forever, and that is what gives life its meaning. Story 2. Inevitability. Of course, I don't want to suffer or die like tomorrow, but it's something so natural and the only certainty I have in life. It might sound grim, but death is as much of a part of life as living is. It doesn't make sense for me to feel afraid of certainty. Story 3. In my own life, fearing the unknown has often been a fruitless experience and proven to be wrong. I was afraid to go to high school because it was going to be too hard, have too much homework, and the social circles were going to be meaner. Was that true? Yeah, but it wasn't nearly as bad in the moment. I also had a lot of positive experiences. Similar negative feelings were negated with going away to school after I graduated, having my first job, living on my own, traveling far from home, etc. Just because something is outside your comfort zone doesn't mean it's going to be torture. Story 4. It doesn't make sense to me. There is so much we don't understand about life, how life is created, how everything started, how it will end, if it will end, if time is even real and all that crazy shit. The idea that this will only happen once just doesn't make sense to me. If time is infinite, or if the Big Bang is cyclical, how is it possible that this only happens once? Surely it isn't. It hurts my brain. I promise I'm not high. Story 5. It took me a long time to get over the fear. Time and therapy, lol. A lot of it had to do with grieving and allowing the sorrow to feel the way it needed to. I had to be upset about all the things I was missing out on, all of the things I wish I could do that death would limit. I grieved all of the future that was going to pass me by, and at first it was almost overwhelming, but then it would settle some and settle some more. And then there was a time where I barely grieved at all. That's when I knew I was free. I shared a lot of my feelings with my friends and family. Never out of nowhere, never pushy, but blunt and direct when the topic came up. Yup, I did try to take my life. Yup, I did have very bad depression. Yup, I did fear death a lot, but I try not to go into it, and most people change the subject fast enough. It still feels weird, but it's almost shame by proxy. They're uncomfortable. It's a part of my life. It happened, and that's that. Oh well, after that, I set the time I had to focus on other things. Nowadays, I have a busy life, and every once in a while the fear comes back, but it passes as quick as it comes. I filled a lot of my anxious mind with hobbies and small things I can do to improve myself. Not out of a feeling of lacking, but for discipline and self-confidence. Focusing a lot on those small victories lets me feel like I'm living a full life. And when I feel that way, the fear hardly passes at all. Story 6. I got diagnosed with terminal ALS last year at 31. It's terrifying to know I only have a few years left, and in the end I'm going to be trapped in a completely useless body while my mind is perfectly fine. I'm going to die, sooner than I thought, but it has to happen at some time, I guess. Story 7. I grew up on a farm, and many times I buried beautiful animals as a young man. They looked peaceful after the fact. Fast forward 32 years, and most of the people I love are dead now. I remember my grandma's final hours. I was leaned in towards her hospital bed with my head resting close to hers, just meditating. Though she was very weak, she suddenly became lucid and told me, "I'm all right." I responded, "It's not easy, is it?" She said no and smiled. She died 40 minutes later. That's why I'm not afraid. She was sharp and brave until the end. Her face was peaceful, and so will mine be. Story 8. I've had to face it head on. Pancreatitis had me on death's door for 2 years, and then an anaphylactic shock was nearly the nail in the coffin. If I wasn't in hospital already, I'd have died. And as a 28-year-old, I fought against the temptation, the sway, before finally asking, am I going to die? And it didn't matter the reply, because getting to that point so young, of contemplating your death in the moment, scared, alone, in pain, It breaks something inside of you. I'm doing okay now, recovering at least. And it's not the dying I'm scared of. I've done like most of it, that's fine. Just drug me up so I don't feel pain and let me wax poetic, it's fine. It's the timing. If you were to tell me I was dying tomorrow, I'd lose it, of course. I have so much more to do. But after a good life that I nearly didn't have, nice and old, having done what I hadn't had the chance to do, fucking easy. Maybe I'm splitting hairs, maybe my fear of timing is what a lot of people are scared of. But the dying isn't all that scary anymore. And I always look at this way. One of three things happen. It all goes black. I wake up facing a deity I didn't believe in, or I wake up as a new child with no memories. 2, 3 are without consequence. And if I do stand facing God, then let me be judged, but I know I've lived well. Story 9. First things first, my faith in Jesus Christ and eternal life, which was promised to us through his death and suffering for all of humanity. Secondly, because dying is a certainty, there's no need to fear it. It's a circle of life. Life is short. Go live, get to know Jesus, and don't be afraid. Story 10. My mom passed at 64 DT, getting cancer a second time. My sister passed at 36 DT cancer. I got it too, but got it removed and am likely to get it again even with chemo and medicine within the next 20 years. I don't have kids, which is good. I would be absolutely devastated if one of them got it too, like I gave it to them, or have to go through the pain of losing a parent like my sister's kids did. I like to think of Mark Twain's quote, "I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born, and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience from it." Story 11. Honestly, I've accepted that I cannot control the fact that I will die, but I am very concerned about how I will die. I speak as someone who almost died a few times, including most recently having a brain abscess. Because paralysis, stroke, Alzheimer's, dementia, and so on are all horrible. I lost control of half my body for a few weeks, and it completely changed my perspective. I think I understand now why people want medically assisted euthanasia. However, I still personally don't believe it is up to us to choose when and how we die, yet my experience makes me question whether that should be the case. Story 12. Had a pretty big shakeup in my life. I felt like I died. Every semblance of the world that I had created had vanished, and I was left with nothing. I dealt with all the thoughts that would make you want to do it, and fought them off like crazy. At some point, it triggered the thought that life is meaningless, and somehow that makes it more beautiful. All of the sudden things that I was scared of before started seeming less frightening. Maybe it's recklessness, maybe it's knowing that I have lived a good story so far. I no longer want to ever be scared of doing things because I want to keep living. I want to live by not being scared. You only got one life to shoot your shot. You could get ass cancer staying inside. Story 13. Think about what you are. Are you just your brain, or are you the sum of your parts? So, the loss of brain activity, what we generally recognize as human death, is just the loss of one part of ourselves. So what becomes of the rest of you? It withers, it also dies, but really it's just turning into another state. Now, all those things eventually decay and become their component parts, and those component parts may one day become a part of something else, maybe someone else. So now the question, what are you? If you are the sum of your parts, then those individual pieces of you live on, eternally. But now they are lacking the one thing the human mind does give us: uncertainty, contemplation, speculation. Our constituent parts are no longer bound to a subjective mind. Instead, each part is now purposeful. Each part is just itself. It doesn't ponder or wonder, it just is. Think about what that would be for each and every part of you, that instead of screaming for meaning, each part is suddenly filled with it. I'd call that heaven. And for those that think that maybe we are just our minds, I could see how that would be hell. Story 14. There's comfort in knowing that everyone experiences it. I've also learned that the brain releases chemicals when you die that may ease the process. Endorphins are believed to be involved. These are opiate-like chemicals that the body produces to help relieve pain and induce some feelings of pleasure. DMT is also speculated to be released by the brain in near-death experiences. Keep in mind, this is all still being researched. I'm sure people have brought this up already, but DMT can cause hallucinations and altered states of consciousness. Some theories suggest that the release of DMT in the brain might play a role in the reported feelings of euphoria and transcendence that some people describe during near-death experiences. Regardless, I hope that when I go, it will be instant. Story 15. I think that I'm afraid of knowing when I'm dying. I'm completely fine and even open to dying whenever, as long as it's quick and I don't know it's happening. If I got in a car crash and I die immediately, yay for me, I don't care. If I get into a car crash and have to suffer in the hospital before dying, not for me, because I have to sit there and think about how my death will affect those around me and how I can't die yet, I'm too young, etc. Story 16. Curiosity. Did one of our religions get it right? Is it just lights out? Do we go up and join a big cosmic soup bowl and swim among the stars? Does my consciousness go to another part of the universe, and I live as an alien? Do I come back as an animal? Nobody knows. Not really. The ones who do aren't very talkative. I'm looking forward to finding out what comes next, if anything, but I'm in no rush to get there. Story 17. We all go at some point. Beyond that fundamental truth, which also sounds like seemingly generic platitude, I've lived a really full life. I've been on 4 continents, in 3 correctional facilities, graduated college, been a fugitive, bought a house, gardened, gotten into fistfights, gone snorkeling on LSD, started a business, been married, divorced, competed in sports, created art, lived in 3 countries, and at the age of 35, I finally met the love of my life. Hell, we are just sentient monkeys clinging to a water-covered rock hurtling through the void of space. Our brains are just electric blobs of meat. Life is inherently improbable, fragile, and absurd. Just enjoy yourself while you are here. Story 18. I work on the ambulances. I had a chap having a heart attack who then lost his pulse and stopped breathing. He died. Prior to him stopping breathing, he was making idle chit-chat. We worked our magic and shocked him. We got him back before we got to the hospital. He came back around remarkably quickly and asked what happened and why does his chest hurt. Me. Your heart stopped, mate. You just gave us a right scare. Him. Oh, I thought I just nodded off. So, the chap was dead for roughly 45 seconds. He knew nothing about it, just like he'd nodded off to sleep. I'm not scared of death. I just don't want to be dying for a drawn-out length of time. I'm proud to say that after 2 stents and a stay in the hospital, he got discharged home. This was 3 years ago and he's still going. I saw him in Aldi the other week. He recognized me before I did him. Nice chap, glad he's doing well. Story 19, I was just thinking about this today. I'm late to the post, so nobody will see this, but I still want to try and type out my thoughts on it. Death to me is the answer to the unanswerable question, what happens after we die? Hundreds of religions have debated, theorized, and fought over their beliefs, but nobody in the world has any solid evidence or proof of the actual answer. The only way we are able to come to the answer ourselves is to die. So to me, I look at death as my time to learn the final answer. What will I find on the other side? Will it just fade to nothingness? We have no way of knowing until it's our turn to know the truth. And in the meantime, I will have lived as good of a life as I can, experiencing as much as I can of this beautiful and crazy world we live on until it's my time to find out. And if there's nothing waiting for me, well, I'll be dead, so I won't even know. Story 20. I don't think I am that important. I wasn't here most of the time. It's going to be okay without me. I have dealt with a lot of death, most friends, former addicts, or varying shades of mental illness. People relapse, unfortunately. I've been to many funerals, and I've learned that life goes on without us, and that's okay. I'd like to leave a legacy in the hearts of those closest to me. But really, the greater picture is so much bigger than teeny tiny me, keeps my ego in check and helps me enjoy the time I have. Story 21. I got this quote from some media about immortal people. Dying is what makes life worth living. Honestly changed my outlook on life. Also, dying is easy. You close your eyes, boom, dead. The uncertainty of what comes after is what's scaring me a little. But I just hope it's not fucking hell or floating in eternal nothingness. Might be the same thing. And ease my mind with the knowledge that no one will ever know for sure. It's impossible to figure out, so I don't think about it. Story 22. I like to think that death is peaceful. Like a relief, that once you left your physical body, your soul finds its way through the universe, guided by your loved ones. I don't want to die, of course. I still have so much to accomplish, but I'm no scared of it. I mean, yeah, it's unpredictable, but so is life. And it's my first time being human like all of us. Don't torture yourself with something you can't control. If it's free from your hands, it deserves freedom from your mind. Have a great day, mates. 3. Story 23. I grew up in a very active area for spirits of the departed. My dad and I both saw the same little girl who had passed during a flood that occurred years before in the area we now lived in. I was always a sensitive empath, so it really didn't surprise me when we started hearing doors open and close, AD chairs move. Here's a quick breakdown. My dad was a musician who primarily played old blues from the late early 1900s. We started hearing children's laughter coming from upstairs when he played music downstairs. Our kitchen chairs would push themselves away from the table and against the dining room walls, which I didn't know was a very common occurrence in Mennonite communities, so you could use the table to help prep dinners and such. I was having a rough night, so I decided to go upstairs and get a glass of water. As I was walking up the stairs half asleep, I saw a little girl walking downstairs, and I thought it was my little sister. I lifted my arm, and the girl bent down and walked under my arm and kept going. 2 steps later, I realized I could see the banister through her. A couple of years later, I mentioned her to my dad, and he got a weird face and asked me to describe her. I did. Short 10 or 11, pigtails and some sort of dress. He told me of seeing her one night and realizing he could see the VCR through her as well. There were other events, but you get the drift. I'll leave one more story here, though. My dad passed away in April after a quick bout with cancer. The last 5 days he was non-responsive, but we all took turns staying with him until the end. During this time, I mentioned to him that if he could let me know if he got to the other side. As it happened, he passed at dawn. I was there with my sister. She was starting to panic and woke me from my doze. I went and put my hand on his head and watched as his pulse started to flutter. I leaned down and told him to go in peace, and he just left. As I told my sister, he had gone an older dementia patient that had come in the night before, started to yell my name over and over. Up till now she was quiet. My sister, though her tears told me to shut her up, but she heard my name as well. Win, win, win! So I opened the door to fetch the doc to confirm time of death, and as soon as I did, she started a pointing gesture. My dad was a big hand talker and said, "Win, you do a good job. You do a good job, Win," pointing with each word. I'll never forget that. My dad's last message: looking after the family is now my responsibility, being the oldest. What's the point of these stories? He passed and gave me a message that he made it. I'm not afraid of death. It's just the how I worry about, so I hope it's not painful or slow. Story 24. At a certain age after my last living parent died, I came to understand that my end isn't far away. I'm at peace with it. I stopped being fearful because I accept it will happen just like it will with every person. My only sadness is thinking about the way my loved ones will feel. I don't want them to feel bad or sad, but realize instead it's the circle of life, and be happy and enjoy life best they can, and be kind and loving, and cherish those who love you. Story 25. There are much worse things in life than dying for me. I grew up in a very traumatic and abusive household where I would beg God to kill me almost every night for many years as a young child. Death became a sooner comfort than the hands of those who were meant to love me. I've been to a lot of therapy now, but I'm still not afraid of the inevitable end. It'll happen one way or another, and my body has gotten so used to the idea I almost don't think about how terrifying it could be. It's out of my control regardless. Story 26. I've been a nurse for almost 10 years and see very, very frequently what happens when you prolong life with no quality of life. Grandma may be a fighter in your mind, but she is vegetative, on a vent, has a feeding tube, has no response to the world around her but screams in agony when I have to turn and reposition her to prevent bed sores. Eventually that stops helping as her body breaks down. Or have to clean, pack, and dress her tunneling sacral ulcer that is 2 knuckles deep with bone showing. And God forbid she codes, I get do CPR with her ribs sounding and feeling like Rice Krispies under my hands. All I want is a peaceful death with limited interventions. Story 27. I've thought about it, as well as done a lot of spiritual reflecting in my life. I've accepted what death is and integrated it into my expectations from life. I have learned to value every second of life because of it. The thing is, anything in life is scary if you don't know how to fit it into your expectations. We're born, we live, we die. Once you accept life and death and its finality, it is peaceful. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it, be sure to write comments and share your stories.